Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are on Season 3, Episode 16, Profit Motive. This episode first aired February 20th, 1995. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's podcast?
No. It was perfect.
That was Destiny, where Sisko starts to think maybe he is the emissary, or maybe there's something to this emissary thing.
Yeah, because a guy came through the Stargate to tell him.
Right. And then this week, our episode is called Profit Motive, as in the profits, Prophet.
Oh, play on words.
Yeah.
Dad joke.
It is a dad joke. Should we get started?
I think so.
In the cold open, we're in Quark's quarters, and a woman is stroking his ears, and they're talking about her buying his big supply of stem bolts.
Self-sealing stem bolts.
Right. Quark puts off getting a deal signed because he is enjoying doing whatever it is that they're doing. Rom barges in with something urgent to say, but Quark tells him to get out because this female is willing, wealthy, and she wants to buy our stem bolts. This whole scene is a little bit gross, but I'm just going to keep going. And next, in comes the super tall protector of the Grand Nagus, whose name is apparently May Hairdo, which I'm always going to call him My Hairdo.
Yes, hair guy.
And he's also with someone who's completely covered in a robe and a hood. We assume it's the Nagus because he has the staff. And the Nagus and his bags enter, and Rom says, "Oh, it looks like he's moving in."
I have a theory here.
And?
The family of this woman sent her to negotiate because they heard through the grapevine, if you're negotiating with Quark and you're pretty, he's a complete idiot.
Yes, and if you stroke his ears in particular, he has no idea what to do. And the way he reacts to it, it's just really gross. Although, I will say that in this scene, Quark is wearing this very natty tan striped shirt with some kind of a Nehru collar.
Oh.
And a really nicely fitted vest with a square neckline, and he's got some fancy bejeweled decoration on his chest. Did you not notice these things?
I did not notice any of that.
He looked sharp. I mean, I don't like Quark, but he looked really good. And then what was funny was when Rom comes running in, he looks like he's wearing a long sleeve workout t-shirt and or maybe his pajamas or something. And next to Quark, he looked really funny. So I can't believe you didn't notice.
I think that's a very deliberate stylistic choice for later in this episode.
Probably. Yeah, probably. In the infirmary, Sisko calls Bashir to the wardroom, which is our new party room, obviously. When he arrives, they're throwing him a little party. He's confused, and Sisko tells him he's been nominated by the Federation Medical Council for this year's Carrington Award. Bashir seems shocked by this, and we learn that Dax submitted his name for his work in biomolecular replication. He's the youngest person ever nominated for the award. He kind of gulps down some champagne and then says he has work to do, and he runs out, leaving everyone a little bit baffled.
This does seem like something Dax would do. I think she's interfering in Bashir's life a little bit too much.
I'm not sure I understand why you think that.
Well, I think she's pulled strings of people that she knows and got
right.
Bashir nominated for this award rather than it happening organically, that somebody recognizes his work.
Right.
So she sort of used her influence that you obviously across 8 lifetimes you would get.
I think she thought she was doing something nice. I think back to that episode Defiant.
Yeah.
When Bashir was assigning vacation tasks to Kira.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that, and you disagreed with me. I feel like this is the opposite of the same thing, where one person is like pushing their own way of the other person to be happy onto them.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I see your point now, yes.
Okay. Well, Dax and Bashir are walking on the promenade now, and Dax is giving him a hard time for not being excited by this nomination. Bashir says he's not going to win because the award is meant to be the crowning achievement for a lifetime in medicine. One of the nominees is 106 years old. He thinks he's convinced her not to talk about it anymore, but then she asks who he thinks will win. He walks off in a huff.
Sometimes I don't think she can honestly help herself.
Yeah, she's very different than she was, I think, in the beginning of the show, but also so is he.
Oh, he's a different character.
It's kind of funny, I guess.
I still think he was replaced by one of those replicants from the episode with Miles.
Right.
And the rest of the crew really liked this new replicant version of Julian and just, went with it.
Yeah, they're not looking for the original one anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still not really sure, even after this scene, why Julian is unhappy. Is it because, well, maybe we'll find out more later, but Is it because he knows he's not going to win and he doesn't want to lose? Or is it because he just thinks it's silly to be nominated next to them? Or is it because he really wants this award? He just doesn't think now is the right time.
Well, that's an interesting question because I have the feeling that Julian is somebody who does not like to lose.
Right.
That it's very difficult for him not to win because he does work hard on these things.
That's what I think. Yeah.
But also, maybe there is a little bit, perhaps, of hero worship or a version of imposter syndrome of, I'm not in the same league as these people, and you're putting me forward.
It could be. It's not really clear here. I know that from my own personal experience, I don't like to be up for these kinds of things or part of these kinds of things because I'm private and I just don't like my business in front of other people and it's embarrassing. But it doesn't seem like that's exactly the problem. It feels a little bit like he doesn't like to lose, but it's just not really clear exactly what's bothering him. We get a little bit more out of him, but not a lot.
Right. Although Dax does seem to be annoyed that he isn't delighted by this.
Oh, she absolutely is.
And I think it points to the difference between Jadzia Dax and Bashir, because she likes this. Her being up for an award or her being at the forefront of something, that seems to be very much her, and she likes that attention. Whereas we're seeing with Bashir that maybe he doesn't like that kind of attention. The funniest part of all is the fact that she doesn't seem to recognize that with Bashir.
I think she was very well rewarded when she was in school. It seems like she was always top of her class at everything, right? She had a bunch of degrees and a bunch of awards that they talked about in that episode, Dax.
Yes.
So to her, this is probably perfectly normal, and she just doesn't get it.
I want everyone to know that I am the best possible candidate.
Yeah, that could be it. Well, now Quark is bunking with Rom, and he's quite annoyed at his messy quarters. Nog usually cleans the place, but he's off visiting his grandmother.
Rom is a complete slob.
Yeah, it's quite a mess.
I was getting an Odd Couple vibe from this.
Well, they are kind of an odd couple. While Quark is ranting and picking stuff up off the floor and the sofa, he realizes that Rom is stealing from his stockroom.
He also makes a reference to pack lids as well.
He does. Rom refuses to clean up, and they argue pointlessly. Quark decides he's taking his quarters back from the Nagus, and he stomps across the hall, and he rings the bell. But he chickens out at the last second and pushes Rom into the doorway. When the Nagus opens the door, he's very jolly and he invites them in. He wants to show them what he's been working on. He gives them a book, calling it The Shining Triumph of His Life. He's rewritten the rules of acquisition for the modern Ferengi. He tells Quark and Rom to absorb and enjoy. Rom doesn't want to learn a whole new set of rules. That would be me.
Yes.
But Quark says they'll be the first to learn from Zek's wisdom and they'll be rich. So he opens the book and he reads the first rule, which is, if they want their money back, pause, give it to them. And well, that is quite a shocker. And now they see my hairdo crying in the corner as this is very upsetting to him.
The Nagus is being very surprisingly jovial.
He is, yes.
He's being friendly to Rom and just generally in a very upbeat mood.
Yes, he's very cheery.
But it was great when they walked into the apartment and all the furniture is gone.
Oh, yes. And he said, I got rid of it. It's like, what a terrible house guest. He stays at your place and he gets rid of all of your furniture.
Even when he's jovial and in a nice mood like this, he still manages to find a way to pick on Quark.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, he absolutely does.
Also, jumping back a little.
Yep.
I feel this is another example of why Quark is honestly a terrible businessman.
Why is that?
Quark points out that everything in Rom's apartment, everything is from Quark's bar, including the drinks.
The table, the linens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and even funnier, the whiskey that Rom was drinking was from Quark's personal stock.
Yep.
And he doesn't even notice this is going on.
Yeah, no, he doesn't notice. You would think that a Ferengi, someone who is so focused on every profit, or is supposed to be so focused on all of the profit, would be like a hoarder of stuff and would be so carefully protecting everything. But I know we've commented before that he's frequently counting Latinum right on the bar.
Yep.
And I would think he would be much more of a miser and counting it behind closed doors and very much don't touch my stuff.
Yes, going back every evening and counting his personal stock of whiskey.
Exactly. But he definitely does not do that.
There was a lot came out in this one.
Now I think we go back to Rom's quarters, and Rom is reading through the rules, and there are things like never place profit before friendship, which makes Quark shudder. Rule number 22 is Latinum tarnishes, but family is forever. Money can never replace dignity. And then Rom jumps to the end and reads rule number 285. A good deed is its own reward.
I sense a new direction in the rules.
Yes, they're like the exact opposite of what they were before.
Yeah.
In fact, Quark starts to hyperventilate and he has to sit down. He thinks maybe this is a test and the book is some kind of code. So they try reading the first word of each rule. If never, keep profit, a good smile, honesty. This means nothing to them. So then they hold the pages up to the light and nothing. And then Quark licks the book and nothing. And Rom suggests maybe the Nagus has gone insane. But Quark assumes it's just part of some devious, complicated plan that they don't yet understand.
Which would be accurate for the Nagus. It is the kind of thing I could see him doing.
Yeah, well, he's done it to them before. He's had some complicated plan and not filled them in on it.
Yeah, and I did like when Quark told Rom, till they figure things out, they act like they know nothing.
Which Rom is very good at. Yeah.
I can do that, brother.
Oh, that was good. You sounded just like him. At least in my headphones.
Oh, thank you.
Now we go to the bar and Quark is repeating, if never, keep profit, a good smile, honesty.
He's trying to figure out the code.
He really wants it to mean something. The Nagus enters and wants to buy everyone a drink. When Quark asks why, he says, because it will make everyone happy. And then everyone cheers. Quark offers him some beetle snuff and he says he's lost the taste for it. It might be fun for you and me, but it's no fun for the Beatles. Oh my God. I laughed so hard at that. He said, I was like, what is happening?
This whole opening is hilarious. I was laughing my head off too. And if you notice, when he's doing this, Meherdu in the background has this exasperated look on his face.
Oh, he's very upset by this. Yeah, He does not even recognize his boss. And then the worst thing of all happens for Quark. The Nagus has ruined his deal for the stem bolts. The deal wasn't officially signed because, as we said in the beginning, Quark was distracted by the pretty girl again.
A terrible businessman.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, she even made a comment about, that's a strange attitude for a Ferengi.
Yes, she did. And the Nagus told this woman where she could get all the stem bolts she needs wholesale. And Quark is shocked and annoyed, but really it's his own fault, so he can be as mad as he wants.
Oh, and we see Morn in the background.
Okay.
I expect as soon as the Nagus said drinks on the house, Morn was at the bar.
Yeah, that's when he appeared. Well, Quark kind of storms out, and the Nagus tells Rom that it's going to take time for everyone to get used to the new ways.
And the Nagus invites Rom to walk with him. I thought that was a nice little touch there. And then Meherdu goes behind the bar and pours himself that large drink of green something and just chugs it.
Chugs it down, yeah. Yeah, he's very distressed.
If he's drinking creme de menthe straight like that, he's going to be really sick.
Oh, I'm sure that's not what it was. It was some gross other thing that was made from bugs. We didn't mention the thing earlier when Quark, he ordered like centipede juice or something
millipede
without
juice,
the shells. Oh, millipede juice. Yeah, I didn't write it down because it was kind of gross, but it could be that. So I wouldn't get too upset about it being creme de menthe. Now Miles and Julian are playing darts instead of racquetball. And Miles finds that he can distract Julian by bringing up the Carrington Award and kind of poking at Julian about it because he keeps missing the board.
Yes.
But Julian eventually figures it out and he pokes back, bringing up Keiko, which makes Miles miss the board. And then they kind of grin at each other. And I'm finally starting to see this relationship building. Yes. Yeah, I thought that was just a little tiny scene, but it was actually quite cute.
Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed that scene. I thought it worked very well. Yeah. It was a good little sort of bonding scene that, to be honest, felt very real.
Yeah.
Between two guys that are friends, or certainly becoming better friends. And I'm 99% certain Miles was reveling in picking on Julian for a change.
And in the past, when they've had these kind of, I don't know, adversarial is too strong of a word, but when they've had these kinds of scenes, it's actually been quite negative.
Yeah.
And you could feel the distaste that Miles had for Julian.
Yeah.
And, Julian always would seem to be sort of standing above Miles, right? And it just never worked. They were never equals.
Yeah.
But this scene actually felt like they were finally kind of equals, which was cool.
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
Well, now we go to Rom, and he's setting up the sector's headquarters for the Ferengi Benevolent Association. And Rom is the new senior administrator.
I don't think those are words that go together.
Well, they're not. I mean, we don't even really know what it is.
Ferengi benevolent.
Yeah, it seems to really irritate Quark, which is pretty funny. I think the charter of this association is a little unclear to us, but it appears to be a charity to help Ferengi in need. And I would think that would be every Ferengi because they would take advantage of it. They would all have their hands out, right? Saying, oh, yes, I need some charity. So I don't know how this would work.
Oh, I took it as this was the Ferengi helping other people, not just Ferengi.
Like I said, the charter is unclear. So Quark is so annoyed, he drags Rom back to their messy quarters and he tells him to get back to work at the bar. But Rom says the Nagus has big plans for him. He's going to mold him into a new kind of Ferengi, an evolved kind. It's time for the Ferengi to move beyond greed. This really irritates Quark. He says greed is the purest, most noble emotion. Rom says the new 10th rule of acquisition is greed is dead. And Quark protests, saying, no, it's not. It's greed is eternal. Not anymore, Rom says. He tells Quark that the two of them will be at Zek's side as they shake the foundation of Ferengi society. And this is not what Quark had in mind for his future. He says there's something terribly wrong with the Nagus and they have to help him before he gets them all killed.
I like it when Rom tells Quark that the Nagus thinks he's malleable.
Yeah.
As if that's a positive trait.
I don't think he knows what that means.
Yes. I also find it interesting that Rom is just rolling with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's always how Rom has been.
Yeah.
Like when that guy in Rivals opened up the new casino, Rom was like, okay, right? Rom just goes with it.
I like that touch with the way, the Nagus has these plans of changing the Ferengi, or the new Ferengi, evolved Ferengi. And Rom's like, yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
Well, I think if we try to think about this show as a whole and how they grow the characters.
Yeah.
In the episode where Nog is trying to get an opportunity to get into Starfleet, he talks about how his father doesn't have the lobes for business and neither does he. And if we think about it that way, that must be really difficult for a Ferengi if they don't have, I don't want to say the lobes, but if they don't have whatever it takes to succeed in business, then they are going to follow anything that looks like an opportunity for them to get ahead because they know that they're not going to do it on their own. And Rom does seem to chase after things really quickly, even when they don't necessarily make sense.
Oh, okay,
but he sees something and he runs after it because he always knows he can fall back to the bar.
Right. Yes. He does have that fallback.
Right.
Quark will always be there to exploit him.
Exactly. Right. Well, now Quark takes the Nagus to the infirmary to get an exam, and Bashir says he's in excellent shape, but Quark does not believe it. He can't believe that Bashir is supposed to be one of the 5 best doctors in the Federation. He says Bashir's a quack. No wonder everybody says you're going to lose the Carrington Award, which Julian does not appreciate.
Yeah, even Quark brings up the Carrington.
Oh my gosh. So then the Nagus offers Julian some Latinum, saying it's only money, and he can give it to charity if he wants. And Quark is like, this is proof there's something wrong with him. And then the Nagus tells them all about the ceremony tomorrow at the Bajoran shrine on the promenade. He's planning to give a gift to the Bajoran people, but he won't tell Quark what the gift is.
Wallace Shawn, he's playing this so well. I'm personally finding it absolutely hilarious.
He is having a really good time. There's no doubt about it. Now Rom and Quark are trying to break into the Nagus' shuttle in order to find out what the secret gift is. My Hairdo approaches. I can't call him anything other than My Hairdo.
My Hairdo?
He approaches and he opens the door for them. They think he's come to shoot them, but he opens the door and lets them in. He shows them that the Nagus has a migraine trigger. Uh-oh, one of the missing Bajoran orbs. Rom and Quark start struggling over it, which causes it to open, and Quark looks into it and drops into a vision. He's spinning on a table in the bar, and the Nagus is there. The Nagus is popping around from place to place, kind of mocking Quark. He says, don't you think change is worth dying for? All I want is a little leap of faith. In the migraine vision, Quark opens another orb box, and first he finds Zek's talking head in it, and then he finds the book of the new rules, and then the bar is full of people clapping, and Quark is like, oh, and he's figured something out.
Yes.
He comes out of the vision and he says he's figured it out. The prophets, or the aliens in the wormhole, did this to Zek. He tries to get My Hairdo to tell him what happened, but he's not able to talk to anyone but Zek because he takes some kind of an oath to only speak to Zek.
I think this had been brought up before that those servants take a vow of silence to only speak to the person they work for.
Right. Quark breaks into Zek's personal logs and finds out that he obtained the orb from one of his contacts on Cardassia. Once he had it, he headed straight into the wormhole, stayed there briefly, reversed direction, and came to the station.
That all seems very strange.
Yeah. Quark figures he must have gone into the wormhole thinking the prophets would show him the future because they see all time at the same time.
Yep.
And that way he could anticipate economic changes throughout the galaxy. The potential for profit would have been enormous, but something must have gone wrong because instead he came out with the new rules. Quark says he has an idea of how to set everything right.
So when they opened the box and Quark had the visions, it seemed to follow the pattern we've seen before where they're riddles, so nothing really means quite what they're saying.
Yeah.
Do you think that the prophets are actually talking through the visions? That when you open those boxes, you're actually seeing the prophets? They're making this? Or is the orb something else, like an AI? It's an intelligent thing that's doing this on its own. It's a device of some sort. Or do you think the prophets talk through them?
I don't know. The Bajoran religious people seem to think it's the prophets, right? Speaking to them. But I'm not sure because it's quite different when the prophets do actually talk to him later. It's very different. So I don't know. I wonder if it has something to do with once it gets outside of the wormhole, it's still the same sort of a thing. But the farther it gets away from the so-called temple, the more complicated the riddles become.
Ooh,
I don't know.
I like that. That's a good one.
Because they are very confusing.
Yeah.
Quark seems to get a clue from them. He thinks he hears the word something is a gift. And then he's like, oh, somebody gave something to Zek, and that's what caused this, right? He jumps to that conclusion. But nobody seems to do that in the other visions. Nobody ever seems to make that kind of leap. I think maybe, though, Quark is simple-minded enough that he's looking for a simple answer.
He takes it very literally.
Exactly. And when Barial was getting those complex visions, he didn't know what to do. He knew that there was something bad that was coming and that he was involved in it, but he wasn't looking for the detail of it. So I wonder if they're looking for bigger answers, but Quark was looking for one answer and he found it.
Yeah. So Quark taking a simplistic approach paid off.
Right. Sometimes it pays to be kind of dumb, I suppose. He didn't overthink it.
They should have sent Rom in.
Oh my God. Yeah. I wonder what he would have seen.
Good question.
And now Odo joins Bashir in the Replimat. And when he does, Bashir kind of hides the pad that he's looking at. And Odo says he has a friend at Starfleet Intelligence who has another friend who has a cousin who's married to the assistant of one of the members of the Federation Medical Council. And through this grapevine, he's learned that the favorite for the Carrington Award, Dr. Wade, is not going to win. And Julian is like, oh, not you too. Julian claims he's not expecting to win, but Odo wonders then why he's working on his acceptance speech. Bashir is very embarrassed and he asks how he knows. Just a guess, Odo says, smiling very coyly. I wasn't really sure what the point of this was. I guess to show us that Julian really does want to win, or at least a part of him wants to.
Yes, he is taking it seriously.
But he's putting up that front of pretending like he's not. He knows he won't win. That way you won't see him be disappointed. That could be it. That's something very relatable as a human.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't want others to see him disappointed. And so he just pretends like it's nothing. It's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Did you notice in this scene as well, the very convincing smile Odo did as he stood up and walked off?
Yeah, it was a coy little look,
This was a real change. I'm tempted to go back and actually look at some other episodes and see if he's smiled before, but previously he's done that really sort of painful, difficult smile.
Yeah.
And has he been practicing in his quarters?
Maybe. Does he have a mirror? Maybe he's practicing in a mirror in his quarters.
I think this is another hint at the evolution of Odo, of now he's actually smiling and doing a proper job at it. It might be nothing, or it might be something.
Okay, David Letterman. Is this something? Now the Nagus is working on an altruistic deal of some kind with somebody over base time when My Hairdo, Rom, and Quark come in. They drop a bag over the Nagus, and My Hairdo carries him out. And the Nagus is humming away happily as he's being carried down the hall and placed into his shuttle.
Yeah, he's just humming away, seems quite happy, and Quark gets worried and asks him how he is. And I loved it. The Nagus replies with, "It's okay, Quark. I forgive you."
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a really funny comedic episode. There's a lot of little short gags that really kind of seem to work for me.
Yeah, it's definitely funny. So when they're on the shuttle together, Quark tells him, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And he takes them towards the wormhole.
Oh, and Rom, this is a very brave thing you're going to do. I wish I could come with you, but I can't. Goodbye.
Yeah, he gets out of there as fast as he can. Yeah. And it's just the Nagus and Quark going to the wormhole.
Yeah. Rom might actually be more cowardly than Quark.
So Quark takes them into the wormhole and he takes off the hood over the Nagus. Zek tells him the wormhole aliens are delightful people, but they like their privacy. Quark asks how he made contact, and the Nagus tells him to open the box of the Orb of Wisdom. So Quark does, and then he's instantly into a vision, starting in all that white space that we saw Sisko in the very first episode of this whole show called Emissary. Anyway, in this migraine, we see all of the main players from the show talking to him. Bashir, Dax, Kira, Sisko, even my hairdo. Everyone is representing the wormhole aliens, obviously.
And Mahedu gets to say some lines as well.
He does. And they're saying, it's corporeal, a physical entity. And they ask Quark if the Sisko sent him. The Sisko taught them about corporeal beings and linear time. Quark says he wants to discuss the Nagus, and he points at his ears to say, the guy who looks like me. And they say they are aware of the Zek. The Zek wanted to know the outcome of the game before it was played. This was something that Sisko had explained to them in episode 1, that those in linear time don't know how things will turn out, like a baseball game. So the Dax prophet says, Sisko told us that corporeal beings value their linear existence, but the Zek wanted to understand things outside of the restrictions of linear time. Quark says he wanted to see the future so he could gain from it. Yes, the Zek explained the value of gain. How more is preferable to less.
He's almost the anti-Sisko talking to the prophets.
Oh, definitely. They found the concept of prophet aggressive, adversarial, dangerous. They found his adversarial nature invasive, threatening, so they examined the totality of the Ferengi species. There was a time when their acquiring nature was not so pronounced, so they restored the Zek to an earlier, less adversarial state of existence. So Quark demands they re-evolve him, and then they start talking about Quark being the same as the Zek, and they consider restoring him to a less adversarial state as well.
Yes, they propose restoring Quark to a purer existence, if such thing was possible with Quark.
Well, and earlier in the episode, remember, he says that greed is pure.
Yes.
Well, wait, Quark says. There's nothing wrong with acquiring profit. He says, we're all just trying to improve ourselves, and without ambition or greed, people would lie around all day doing nothing, and they'd starve to death. He says this would cause the extinction of everyone. The prophet that looks like Sisko says, your argument is specious. Changing you will not result in the termination of all corporeal existence. Don't try to mess with the people who know everything.
Yes.
They say they want to avoid contact with this species, but Quark says if he's changed, more Ferengi will come. Which I have to say, that's his biggest lie. If they know the wormhole will take away their greed, they'll stay far away. And also, I would think the aliens could see whether or not that would really happen.
I think it was the risk of it would be the biggest problem there.
I guess so. Quark says, leave me alone and put the Nagus back to the way he was. I guarantee you'll never have to talk to another Ferengi again.
Oh, Kim would like that.
I would like that. The Kira prophet says, linguistic communication is tiresome, and they zap him back to the Nagus' ship. The Nagus yells at him to get him out of here.
Yes, and Quark asks the Nagus how he is, who replies, stop toadying up to me, it's revolting.
Yes.
Oh.
And he says, get me out of here. He says he has an orb to sell to the Bajorans, and then he cackles. And then he asks where his beetle snuff is, and Quark is so excited that he hugs him in glee, and they head back to the station. Yeah. And I wrote down in my notes, this is not an improvement for either one of them.
Unfortunately, the Nagus is back to his old self.
Right. Now we're all in the wardroom, waiting for the Carrington Award to be announced.
They should just call that the party room.
They should. That's what I could call it. And Bashir does not win. They're all disappointed, and they all kind of pat Julian on the shoulder and leave.
He does look a little crestfallen at that point.
He's more disappointed than he wants to admit.
Yes.
And he says that to Dax, too. And she's like, I thought so.
Yeah, she kind of had his number, but she was still interfering too much.
Well, now the Nagus and my hairdo are leaving, and the Nagus tells Quark to destroy all the revised rules of acquisition and not tell anyone what happened to the money from the charity. And my hairdo pats Quark on the head as he and the Nagus leave.
Yes.
Quark is only disappointed that he didn't make any profit through all of this. But Rom says he made enough profit for both of them, siphoning off money from the Ferengi Benevolent Association, which was funded from Zek's personal fortune. And Quark is like, you embezzled money from the Nagus? Father would be so proud. The end.
So maybe Rom is a real Ferengi after all.
He knows how to steal. We've established that. All right, let's go to over-analysis. What have you got?
Well, the first thing is, what happened to the orb? Where's the orb? I want to know more about that.
I hope they did sell it to the Bajorans. I mean, he should have given it to them, but I hope he did sell it to them at least.
Yeah.
It's only valuable to certain people.
Right.
But they don't tell us, so we have to assume.
I wanted to see that part of the story wrapped up.
Well, this is a good example of where the Ferengi could have gotten something really good in trade for something like that. You know, they could have been owed a very big favor by Bajor instead of just selling and getting money, but I assume they sold it to them.
Yeah, sometimes I think they miss the bigger picture.
Yeah, all the time.
Second thing, so it seems to me that Ferengi evolution has actually gone backwards.
Yeah.
They've become worse over time, which makes Quark's little speech during the camping episode even stupider.
Oh my God, it really does. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It does make that even worse.
Because, humans had a terrible, violent, aggressive past and are moving beyond that and becoming better. And Ferengi had a better past where they were more empathetic, caring, generous, and have given that up and become awful.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, you're heading in opposite directions as a species.
But it must have been a very long time ago because nobody seems to remember it.
Yeah.
So it could have been like thousands of years.
Or it could be a relatively modern development.
I wonder if they're making a statement here about capitalism.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's also a statement of saying that this is learned behavior. They don't have to be like this. That's what I took from it. The way they behave now is because of societal pressure. And that's how they're taught to behave. They don't have to behave that way.
Yeah. They choose to be jerks. Greedy jerks.
Well, that's what their society says gives them value and worth.
Yeah, right. Societal pressure.
Precisely.
Which is a statement about capitalism.
Yeah. And leading on from that last statement, do you think that there was any physical change to the Nagus, or was it just them removing the negative programming that he'd had? Like, and by that, I mean actually genetically changed him.
Right. Well, that's a good question. I guess that's the implication, is that he devolved, which would be something physical.
Yeah. Interesting. I took it as they just removed the negative programming. He's exactly the same Ferengi that he ever was. I point to Julian doing the examination of the Nagus and saying, he's fine. He's perfect. There's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I guess that makes sense, that then it was really just something mental or some learned behavior that was removed. Yeah. But also it could just be that the sort of pleasure centers of his brain were altered, to get happiness from something else. Because there's that scene where he says he wanted to buy a drink for everyone because it would make everyone happy, and then that would make him happy. And that's not something that would have been true before.
Right. Yeah, we don't get an answer to that.
We do not.
And I think my final point here is dealing with the prophets. Is it morally acceptable, justifiable, to modify somebody in this way, whether it was devolving them to an earlier genetic form or just removing that negative programming? I'll let you answer first.
I don't think they have any real sense of what's right and wrong. And that's one of my points. My only overanalysis point was sort of about this as well. So that's funny that that's your last one. But they somehow seem to revere Sisko in a way that the Bajorans revere them, the aliens. But why? I'm not really sure. There was something that he said that obviously clicked with them.
Yeah.
And now they seem to think that's the way. That's the right and wrong way to deal with these corporeal beings. Because the Sisko told us this, right? So I think that's a really interesting question. Oh, okay. Well, so far up till this point, this is all I know. This is as much as I have been given to know. And they just don't seem to look at it morally. If even Quark didn't say it's right or it's wrong to alter him, he should be allowed to be what he is. They're just like, he was annoying and this seemed bad. And so we just changed him. It's like, oh, okay. Right. This seems bad because it didn't line up with what the Sisko told us.
Interesting. Yeah, because they learn corporeals through a Federation standpoint.
Yes, a Federation lens.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I looked at it as the behavior of Zek. It's corrosive, not just to the Ferengi, but to people that the Ferengi exploit. And I looked at it like if you had a serial killer and they removed that urge to kill people or hurt people, then there's no question that's a good thing. So
yeah,
I saw it as a positive thing that they did. Kind of a greater good thing.
I agree with that. I think the change was positive, and they should have made that change to all the Ferengi.
Simultaneously.
But do they have the right to do it? I don't know.
At the end of the day, I think my answer to that is yes.
Is yes, they do? Okay. How do they know what's right and wrong is my real question. And if they have learned everything that is right and wrong based on their one interaction with the Cisco, I'm not sure they have a complete enough picture. But at the same time, they're able to look at all of time immediately, because they said they looked at the entire existence of the Ferengi, meaning the past and the present, and they made a change. So if they can see everything all at once, maybe they didn't need a lot of info in order to understand enough about what is right and wrong. I don't know. It's so hard to relate to something that's this massive and this impossible. I don't know. It's very easy for me to say things are right and wrong. It's very easy for me to say they should have left Zek that way because he's horrible the way that he is.
Yes.
So I would have taken this new Zek any day. It was much more entertaining. So it's really easy for me to say that. There's a lot of people I'd like to send in there and change them to, versions that I would think are better. But it's hard to judge a power of that nature. Do you remember that Next Gen episode where they ran into that being who had created his own little house with his own little wife, and they were on this planet that had essentially been destroyed?
Yeah.
And it was because someone had attacked them and had killed everyone except him, and he had been so upset by this. He was such a powerful being that he wiped out the entire species that had caused it.
Yes.
And I don't remember the name of the episode. His wife was the woman who played the Arbiter in the Dax episode. There's always all these ties together between all the shows. But at the end, Picard said something like, "We're not even able to assess a punishment for you. There's no such punishment for what you've done."
Right.
And to me, this is similar. It's so big and so different from what we actually should be allowed to judge. Even if it is something that's maybe not right, who am I to judge? They're so much more powerful than I am, and they can see so much more than I can. Maybe I'm too stupid to know if they're right or wrong.
They can see every possible angle.
Exactly. Which is why this is honestly a little bit silly. Because if they could see everything, then why would they listen to anything Quark had to say? It didn't make any difference what he said because they would know the outcome of everything. They already know the end of the game of every game ever played. That doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, that's always the problem with stories like this. When you're dealing with a god, how can you outthink a god or make any drama with a god? How
can you write a god?
Yeah.
I find it very hard to answer that question. Yeah. I think they should have left Zek as the better person that he was.
I would agree with that.
It would have also been more entertaining if Quark and Rom had to run after him trying to clean up what was going on. I think that would have been quite funny, but it would have also been a very different show. So.
Well, trying to keep him alive from other Ferengi who want to kill him.
Yeah.
As we haven't had this in a while.
Okay.
My final point is I found it strange that Quark was able to talk the prophets into doing basically what he wanted and restoring Zek versus Zek, who is an infinitely better negotiator, not being able to convince them to, if not help, at least let him go.
But also, this may have been their plan all along.
Oh.
They obviously knew this was all going to happen because they can see everything. And maybe their plan all along was, hey, now you see how powerful we are.
Ooh.
Leave us alone. Stay out of the wormhole.
That would be kind of godlike.
That would be godlike, exactly.
Nice one.
Because it didn't benefit them in any way to do this.
Yeah.
They were just like, boom, make a change. Oh, okay, change it back. Whatever.
So Quark and the Nagus would leave this situation saying, yeah, don't go in the wormhole. Don't try to talk to them.
Well, they said in the funny vision that they didn't really want to deal with the species anymore. And this is going to result in them not dealing with that species anymore, right? They're not going to go in there. No Ferengi is going to want to have their greed taken away. So I think this is actually the way that they solved that problem. I think this was their plan all along.
Ooh, wow.
Because why, honestly, would they care anyway about what Zek did or whatever? I think this just served their purpose.
Yeah.
Kept the Ferengi away from them.
Gotcha. That's a really good over-analysis point.
Oh, thank you very much.
And with that, it wraps it up for me.
Well, then let's go to women in the future. Not much to say. Putting Zek back to the way he was does not help women anywhere. So that's not looking great for women in the future. And then there really wasn't much else. I mean, Dax had a very small part in this episode. He thought maybe she overstepped. I think she thought she was helping in the same way that Julian thought he was helping in that other episode, the Defiant episode. So not really much positive or negative to say about women in the future. So let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
I give it a thumbs up because it is one of the best comedy episodes of Star Trek. It's very funny, and Wallace Shawn just runs with this character so well. It makes a very funny episode, every scene he's in. But at the same time, it's also a very sad episode because it shows you what the Ferengi could be, how much more they could be, and better they could be. And in some ways, it's taken away from them. Quark doesn't embrace, again, the positive change that could make his life better, happier, in the same way that he rejected Pell.
Yeah.
His own bigotry or biases affected his happiness. And I see this as another example of that. And it makes the episode, I think, from Quark's perspective, kind of tragic. Even though I enjoyed it as an episode and found it very funny, there is a very sad element to it.
Interesting. I didn't write down a rating. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. I think I needed to discuss it a little bit here first before I would be able to determine. And yes, there were very funny parts in it. I laughed quite a bit. I think I laughed more just in us talking about it than I did when I was watching it. And the first time through, I fell asleep. I never fall asleep. It so rarely happens. But I did nod off during the scene where he was talking to the prophets at the end. Granted, I was very tired. I had a very long week at work. But still, I nodded off. And so it wasn't really holding my attention, even though it was entertaining. But I will freely admit, I do not like the Ferengi. I do not like the Nagus. I don't want to see stories about them. I find them all very irritating. This was a version of the Nagus that I can take because he was quite funny and he was trying to help people and it was driving Quark crazy, so I did enjoy that. But at the end, he was right back to what he was before and he's just going to go back to harassing women. So, I don't know, not a big fan. So I think I kind of fall in the neutral category. It's not so much that I have a meh feeling about it, but I feel like there's pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit confusing with the stuff about the wormhole aliens or the prophets, because it seemed a little bit like, why would they even bother with this?
But I think your justification that you made a few minutes ago.
That they were trying to get the Ferengi out of their lives.
Yes. I'd never thought of that.
Me either. I didn't think about it until just now, while we were discussing it. So I think that's maybe the thing that makes sense. But I'm going to land on neutral.
Yeah.
I guess. Not terrible, but not great. But quite frequently when I give a rating that is neutral or negative later, I go, I was too hard on it. So maybe next week I'll tell you I was too hard on it. But like if I were going to sit this episode next to the episode The Nagus or any other episode with the Nagus and I was going to choose which one to watch, I would watch this one.
Yeah.
So that's the highest compliment I can pay a Ferengi episode.
And it has great rewatchability.
Because you rewatched it. You rewatchability it.
Yes, I did.
I see.
That's a real word, right?
Not really. Okay, so that ends our analysis of season 3, episode 16. Come back next week for episode 17. But in the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, we got a super nice email today, so please feel free to send me an email. It makes me very happy. You can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for individual episodes there, and you can also listen to the other podcasts on our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.